Welcome to the next SR update. Today, Dr. Sashika Chandraratna will update you regarding the pearls of psoriasis management in era of challenging pandemic. Over to you, Sashika.
Thank you, madam. Good afternoon, dear sir, madam, my dear colleagues. Psoriasis is one of the common diseases we encounter during our clinical practice, and we may have to face unexpected consequences in future related to disease per se, as well as during the management. The clinical presentation of psoriasis varies from limited disease to unstable or erythrodermic presentations within any age group. The pathogenesis of psoriasis involving multiple cells in skin, including keratinocytes, endothelial cells, antigen-presenting cells, neutrophils, and lymphocytes. And there are multiple cytokines interplay to produce inflammation. So this is the basic outline of T-cell differentiation. Naive T-cell differentiation directed towards Th17 and minimally towards Th1 in psoriasis plaque. So Th1 differentiation occurs. So Th1 differentiation occurs with involvement of interleukin 12, producing interferon gamma and interferon alpha, TNF alpha. So Th17 differentiation occurs with involvement of interleukin 23, producing interleukin 17A and rest of other cytokines. So keratinocyte damage occurs with multiple environmental triggers, which produce TNF alpha, interleukin 1 beta, interleukin 6. Then subsequent activation of dendritic cells occur. In turn, T cell differentiation occurs towards Th17 subset of T cells, which are cells propagated to produce interleukin 17A. And interleukin 17A itself can trigger keratinocytes to produce more TNF alpha, interleukin 1 beta, and interleukin 6. And interleukin 23 action on Th17 differentiation is accelerated by thymic stromal lymphopoietin. And there is little bit of Th1 differentiation producing TNF alpha and interferon gamma during psoriatic plaque initiation and progression. Psoriatic plaque keratinocyte proliferation and reduced differentiation through keratinocyte growth factor and several other growth factors occur with the involvement of interleukin 17. And this is bidirectional. So keratinocyte proliferation itself can produce production of interleukin 17. And this induced antigen presenting cells, specifically dermal dendritic cells, it tends to maturation, differentiation, and survival of those cells. With the involvement of vascular endothelial growth factor angiopoietin, neoangiogenesis and vasodilatation occurs. With the involvement of interleukin 8, E-selectin, ICAM, neutrophil recruitment occur in epidermis, which produce microastrocytes. All of these produce keratinocyte proliferation and inflammation, giving rise to a well-defined salmon pink color plaque with silvery white scales. So the initial target was on TNF alpha, and then we have moved towards interleukin 23, and finally towards interleukin 17A. So blocking upstream will lead to LECO escape, where we can achieve a full complete control with blocking at the final common pathway at interleukin 17A. So it is important to understand the predominant cytokine in each clinical presentation. So interleukin 17 predominates in chronic plaque psoriasis, whereas interleukin 36 predominates in pustular psoriasis, and interferon lie in between. So treatment should be planned according to the clinical assessment, comorbidities, and other aspects of the patient. So we need to individualize each treatment protocol and we may need to face several unexpected consequences and problems related to unavailability of treatment, clinical problem with clinical assessment, and patient's preference. So the mild disease we can control mostly with topical treatment alone. And we need to top up topical with systemic medication with disease-modifying medication in moderate to severe disease. In severe psoriasis with recalcitrant or recurrent exacerbations, we may have to go for rotational therapy, sequential therapy, or combination, specifically combined with biologics. So there are few recommendations for biologics in psoriasis. So they advise to use TNF-alpha inhibitors in early course in psoriatic arthritis to prevent bone destruction and joint disability. So when comparing other options, interleukin-12-23 blockers are more valuable compared to interleukin-17 blockers. So secukinumab is superior to ustekinumab in clearing skin of subjects with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. The clear study, the landmark trial in psoriasis management trial. So they have examined 675 subjects. Their secukinumab group, 79% patients achieved PASI 90% by 16 weeks. And ustekinumab, 57% of patients achieved PASI by 90% by 16 weeks. So there is 20% difference, and they recommend secukinumab rather than ustekinumab. So there are recommendations for biologics for obese patients. 20 to 45% greater chance of developing metabolic syndrome, even with slight increase of weight, that is about 2.25 kilograms. So they advise to avoid anti-TNF-alpha in obese and overweight patients because it tends to increase the weight during the treatment. And interleukin-12-23 blockers, interleukin-17 blockers are good options with no BMI increment during treatment. For patients with cardiac failure, we need to avoid TNF-alpha inhibitors, specifically NYHA class 3 and 4, and if the ejection fraction is less than 50%. So liberally, we can use interleukin-17 inhibitors and interleukin-23 inhibitors. So what we can do for latent tuberculosis? So we can freely use interleukin-17 and interleukin-23 inhibitors, but we need to avoid, so at least we need to give tuberculosis prophylaxis before starting interleukin-12-23 inhibitors or TNF-alpha inhibitors. Biologics in pregnancy, there are few trials on certolizumab on pregnancy, and even for lactation, lactating mothers, we can use this biology. Trials on newer drugs. So there are ongoing several trials. Most of them are in phase 2 and 3, 2 and 1. And only one JAK inhibitor is in phase 3, which is oral preparation. And there is an intravenous preparation for interleukin-36 receptor antagonist, which is in phase 1 of clinical trial. So this is the basic of few of those newer drugs. The JAK inhibitors inhibit JAK-STAT pathway, which is more important to produce interleukin-17 from Th17 T cells. And S1PR1 agonist, so it induces sequestration of lymphocytes into lymph nodes and decreases peripheral lymphocyte count and trafficking of lymphocytes into peripheral tissue. And ROCK2 inhibitor, it reduces interleukin-17 production from Th17 T cells. And AHR agonist, so AHR is a receptor which is located in endothelial cells. So it helps to recruitment of neutrophils. So it reduces neutrophil chemotaxis. And further, it reduces interleukin-17 production from Th17. So do we need for an alteration of our treatment with COVID-19 patients? It's better to understand a little bit of pathogenesis and health of COVID-19 infection. COVID reach alveoli and enter alveolar lining with help of ACE2 receptor. So macrophages process the antigen and presenting viral components to T and B cells. The T cell differentiation leads to activate Th1, Th2, and Th17, which promotes influx of several inflammatory cells. So, rapid cytokine release and further recruitment leads to cytokine storm. So, are we in a safe place with blocking the alpha, interleukin 6, interleukin 17, and other cytokines? So, this is the preliminary analysis of psoriasis registry for outcome, therapy, and epidemiology of COVID-19 infection. It's a Europe-based study. So they have found majority of patients, the severity of psoriasis remained unchanged during COVID-19 infection. And 50% of them were on biologic. Nearly half of those patients, biologics were stopped. And only 0.03% died due to COVID and related complications. So there are no evidence of increased risk of contracting SARS-CoV-2 or having a worse course of COVID-19 illness during this period. Patients of immunosuppressives with other comorbidities should follow general recommendations and a facial mask. And they should practice shielding a step ahead of social distancing. And we need to continue their treatment. And general recommendation to stop immune modulating treatment during an infection. So mostly COVID-related deaths are due to lymphopenia and monocytopenia in severe COVID-19 disease. So necrosis, apoptosis, and pyroptosis related cell death. So COVID-19 itself causes direct and indirect cellular death with the viral entry to cells and cytokine pooling. So there is a significant association of lymphocyte count and complications related to COVID-19 like ARDS. Secondly, death is due to COVID is due to neutrophilic extracellular trap net. So it is extracellular webs of chromatin, microbicidal proteins, and oxidant enzymes which release from neutrophils. So if net is not regulated properly, it propagates inflammation and microvascular thrombosis. So do we need to think about neutrophilic controlling medications like Dapsone and other proper disease modifying agents? So this is a recommendation given by IABVL Academy for psoriasis management during COVID-19 pandemic. So they recommend topicals, acetylcholine, apremilast for non-COVID psoriatic patients, and we can use phototherapy. And they advise to perform a risk-benefit analysis for cyclosporine and methotrexate. It's possible to decrease the dose and taper the medication. So non-COVID patients, we can use topical plus apremilast. Topicals is acetylcholine, phototherapy, and first biologic as a secukinumab, and secondly TNF-alpha inhibitors. And if they are not responding for those, we can go for methotrexate or cyclosporine. Chronic plaque psoriasis who are COVID-19 positive patients, we can use topicals, acetylcholine, apremilast, and they advise to stop methotrexate and cyclosporine. The cyclosporine itself can reduce the lymphocyte count, but there are no evidence for methotrexate except in bone marrow substitution. Biologics to be stopped. However, in severe psoriasis cases, decision regarding continuation to be taken by treating physician, and they have to analyze risk and benefit for the current treatment and follow-up. So non-COVID erythrodermic patients achieve control with methotrexate or cyclosporine, and we need to shift to acetylcholine or biologic as soon as possible. So erythroderma in COVID, we can treat them with acetylcholine or biologic. Generalized pustular psoriasis in a non-COVID patient, we can treat with acetylcholine, and if it is non-responding or contraindicated, we can go for short course of cyclosporine or methotrexate. And in COVID positive generalized pustular psoriasis, we can treat with acetylcholine. Apremilast, it's a safe drug in viral infections like HIV, hepatitis B, and C. So can we use this drug for COVID-19. It inhibits phosphodiesterase 4, resulting high cyclic AMP and reducing TNF-alpha and interleukin-6. So it may help to prevent breeded cytokine storm of COVID-19. Phototherapy is safe. So narrowband UVB, UVA, we can use freely. And disinfection of chamber following each patient is recommended. And we can use oral or topical fluazole according to the body surface area involvement. Hydroxyurea is a safe second-line drug which is used in HIV patients with psoriasis, and we have to use that drug with the knowing of common side effects as myelosuppression. And there are few case reports on effectiveness of omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D in psoriatic patients with COVID. So biologic treatment interaction results of loss of response, and reintroduction increases chance of antibody formation. So TNF-alpha inhibitors, overall infection and respiratory tract infection increased by 7%. So interleukin-17A blocker, the overall infection is increased by 11%, but particularly it is commonly candidiasis. And there is slight increase of risk of respiratory tract infection. And secukinumab selectively binds to interleukin-17A, and it does not affect essential Th17 functions like interleukin-22 release or TNF-alpha release. Viral myocarditis in COVID-19 is interleukin-17 driven. So argument is when we are blocking interleukin-17A, are we in a safe place to control the complications of COVID as well as in psoriasis? Secukinumab, interleukin-23 blocker, there is slight increase of overall infection, and it inhibits interleukin-12, which plays a key role in protection against viral infection. So there is a theoretical expectation of increase of susceptibility to viral infection. The vaccination, so there can be disease exacerbation. There are few reported cases of psoriasis exacerbations with vaccination. And with this immune dysregulation, with repeated immunization and infection, can it give rise to complicated cases of psoriasis? Obesity is a collateral problem in psoriasis. So obese patients, they tend to have more white adipose tissue and increased amount of free fatty acids. So it increases the amount of adipokines, which gives us low amount of inflammatory state in body. So it produces leptin, resistin, interleukin-17, interleukin-6, and TNF-alpha. In addition, they are more prone to psychological stressors and depression. They are with low physical activities. So all of them contribute to psoriatic disease and related complications like metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular complications. So treatment difficulties in obesity, methotrexate liver toxicity is a concern, and cyclosporine is a lipophilic drug which causes increased amount in the circulation in obese patients, giving rise to nephrotoxicity. And dyslipidemia and obesity goes hand in hand, so we may have to face several problems when we are treating with acid protein. So we can advise them for dietary modification, regular exercise, and there are reported cases of success in pioglitazone and metformin. Semaglutide is highly effective against severe psoriasis in type 2 diabetic patients. So if we are dealing with diabetic and psoriasis, we can think about GLP-1 agonist. So there are few dietary recommendations for adults with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. They strongly recommend dietary weight reduction with hypocaloric diet in overweight and obese patients. And there are weak recommendations for gluten-free diet for serologically positive gluten-sensitive patients. And there are weak recommendations for vitamin D in psoriatic arthritis. The role of flavonoids in Th17 related inflammatory arthritis. They have noted an advantage of flavonoids. So can we use this for our patients with Th17 predominance? So there are few foods like tea, parsley, onion, citrus fruits rich in flavonoids. And we need to advise to avoid the red meat, processed meat, and eggs which contain arachidonic acid which promotes cytokine release, nightshade like containing solanine which promotes several cytokine release. Mediterranean diet, we need more studies to confirm about this diet. And they are not recommending keto diet because it reduces antioxidant fruits and vegetables and increases consumption of meat. Psychological stress and depression. Depression itself increases interleukin 6 and TNF-alpha, and they are tend to have poor eating habits. And SSRI can reduce TNF-alpha, interleukin 1, and interleukin 10. So, can we treat our patients with mild depression or psychological disturbances with SSRI to reduce these cytokines? That brings us to end of my presentation. So I would like to thank Sri Lankan College of Dermatology for giving me this valuable opportunity. Thank you.